Yes. Over to you, Peter. You can start.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you again for putting up with me. I love this. Now, just to warn everybody, what's going to happen is that on the 31st of July, which is in 2 weeks' time, I am unavailable, and the following Sunday I'm also unavailable. But I will continue afterwards. So I have an exhibition of my paintings, and I have to be there. So it's one of those things. So and hopefully I'll come back a little bit richer. So we'll see. Okay, so we're on page 83 in the big book Alcoholics Anonymous, and I actually think that I'll probably get to page 103 in the next week. So we'll be finishing it off quite nicely. So I always start off with a lay aside prayer. And the lay aside prayer goes like this: God, please help us lay aside everything we think we know about ourselves, our alcoholism, our powerlessness, and our unmanageability. About this book and these steps, but most of all about you, God. Father, we ask for an open mind and a new experience in all of these things. Please help us see truth. And we've gone through 9 steps, and we are now on page 83, and we went through the last of the amends on page 82, and it's got that wonderful paragraph at the end on page 82 where it says the alcoholic is like a tornado roaring through the lives of others. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead, affections have been uprooted, selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. And I love this line: we feel a man is unthinking, or a woman is unthinking, when they say that sobriety is enough. Because we need to make amends. Just because I'm sober doesn't mean to say everything is okay anymore. So, and it says, top of page 83, with the family, that there is a long period of reconstruction ahead. We must take the lead. A remorseful mumbling that we are sorry would not fill the bill at all. And then it says we ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it, being very careful not to criticize them. And how do we now see it? We have now, beginning our amends, we've found out about ourselves. One of the things that a gentleman that I follow, I can't follow him now because he's passed away, but he does a lot of writing, or he's done a lot of writing. And he said, and this is around the 4th step, the 4th and the 5th step, and it really is, and he's a very spiritual gentleman, and he wrote in a book called No Man is an Island that we cannot be ourselves until we know ourselves. And by doing step 4 and step 5, we get to know ourselves. And by knowing ourselves, we begin to get to be ourselves, the better selves. And the amends process, step 9, is absolutely crucial and vital to long-term sobriety, that we need to make our amends. And they continue on page 83. It says, so we ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it. That seems to me to be a 5th step with the family, admitting our faults with the family, being careful not to criticize them. So I'm talking about my mistakes. I'm not looking at theirs. Their defects may be glaring, but chances are that our own actions are partly responsible. If you live with an alcoholic who is selfish and self-centered to the core, then everybody around that alcoholic is fighting for their lives, for their emotional life, for their spiritual life, for their actual, sometimes physical life. And they've been doing that ever since we've been drinking. And when we get sober, we've got to recognize that. So it says, so we clean house with the family. So we make amends with the family. And while we're doing that, around the family, we ask each morning in meditation, step 11, that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love to everybody. we don't leave it just for some special people. It's got to be everybody, because we've stopped taking other people's inventory. We take our own now. It says the spiritual life is not a theory. Italics in neon. We have to live it. So the spiritual life is not sitting and praying and meditating. It is actually action. Unless one's family express a desire to live upon spiritual principles, the 12 steps in this book, we think we ought not to urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They're going to tell us in some chapters, in the forgotten chapters, about doing that. They will change in time. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. Because words are no good anymore. They don't believe a word we say, because we've let them down so many times that they've stopped listening. But our actions are important. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. There may be some wrongs we cannot fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. So we hold ourselves in readiness to make right the wrongs for people that we don't know where they are. We can't find them, but we hold ourselves in readiness. Some people cannot be seen, okay, face to face, because it does say, you see, if we look at step 9 on page 59, it says on page 59, it says, made direct amends to such people wherever, not whenever. I hear people read that whenever, and it's not, it's wherever. That means wherever it's possible, we do face-to-face amends. If it's not possible, they tell us on page 83 what to do about it. We don't delay. It says we send them an honest letter in the mail. And one of the great things about a letter is that it doesn't matter, even if you put your address on the back of it, which I always do because we do that in France. It's a tradition. We put the sender's address on the back of the envelope. It may come back unopened, but if it's a letter and it's through the mail, which is quite rare these days, they are going to open it and read what it says. Now, they may stick it in the trash, they may burn it, they may send it back to you, but they're going to open it and read it because it's unusual. If they see your name on an email, they're going to just delete it without even looking. So it's a written letter, not a typed letter or a printed letter of Word or pages. No, writing, making marks on paper. I like that. It's very good. Because it's spiritual in nature. It's one of the things that man has done ever since the Stone Age, thousands of years before, into the megalithic. They were like making marks on walls of caves and making marks on paper. Once we learned how to write and how to make language and actually write down language, so we had sounds instead of pictures. Then we started to write, and we've been writing ever since. And it's a really amazing thing. And there may be valid reasons for postponement in some cases. Yes, there might be. But we don't delay if it can be avoided. We need to do our amends quickly. It's a little like when you've done a 4th step, you don't sit on a 4th step, you go and do a 5th step quickly. Because if you hang on to a 4th step, you'll start to justify every one of the resentments you've got. And it's the same thing with amends. If you delay on the amends, you're going to start finding justification for not doing it. And then they tell us how to be. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble, without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet and we don't crawl before anyone. And if I go and take an amend and somebody starts to yell and shout at me or tell me to go and do something stupid, I put my hand up and say, I'm only here to set right the wrong. I'm not here for you to whip me. I'm going to come back. I'll come back when you're in a better mood. And I will leave, because I'm not going to become a victim of their revenge. That's not what this is all about. Exerting revenge on you when you're trying to make an amend isn't what this is for. So I don't allow that. We don't crawl before anyone. Then it says, if we're painstaking about this phase of our development, what phase? The phase of the 9th step. We'll be amazed before we're halfway through. So when you've got your amends list, split it in half so that when you're halfway through your amends, you can read these promises and you'll see whether it's working or not. It says we're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. Many people think these are the promises of Alcoholics Anonymous. Here's the news. You've got to work the first 9 steps to get these and be halfway through. This doesn't happen by osmosis. Just sitting in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous does not work. Working the 12 steps works 99% of the time if you're thorough and follow the directions in this book. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut on the door on it. No, because my past is the most valuable thing I have when I go on the 12-step course. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we've gone, we'll see how our experience can benefit others. My experience of drinking first and my experience of recovery also. I work in the 12 steps. I have experience of working the 12 steps several times over and over again because I do it on a regular basis. And I can pass that along to anybody, but particularly alcoholics. I don't work with drug addicts or anything like that. I only work with alcoholics. Though I will show anybody that is interested how to work these steps from the big book. But I only sponsor alcoholics. Can't do it with anybody else. That feeling of uselessness, no matter how far down the scale we've gone, we can see that our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Ooh, there's a change. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. And then go count how many times it says will. They're promising, they're saying this will happen to you. We will intuitively know how to, fear of people insecurity, we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. It really depends on how quickly you do your amends. These are the amends promises. They're not the promises of being in AA. This is about how fast you're doing your amends. They will always, I love this, they will always materialize. Condition, always. Whenever they say that, there's a condition. And the condition is that we work for them. So what are we going to do? We're going to work for these promises by doing our amends. And while we're doing our amends, we're going to be living in step 10 and 11. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests, I looked at this a few weeks ago, so I'm going to skim it a little bit. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. So now this becomes a daily discipline. This becomes a spiritual discipline. This is watching, spiritual practice of watching watching what I'm doing, not what other people are doing, but how am I showing up? It says we've entered the world of the spirit. And on the previous page, they've told us that the spiritual life is not a theory, we have to live it. So this is how we live it, by doing our amends and by living in steps 10 and 11. We suggest we continue to take part. Okay, we've done that. It says, we vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We've entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow. Okay, these are not maintenance steps. These are growth steps. We grow spiritually if we practice these principles in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. And here it is. And this is separate. This is not the 11th step. This is the 10th step. There is no writing involved in the 10th step. It is on the go. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Those are the things that we looked for in our 4th step, things we talked about in our 5th step. When these crop up, it doesn't say if, it says when, because they know. We ask God at once to remove them. Please, God, take this fear away from me. We discuss them with someone immediately if we can. We make amends quickly if we've harmed anyone. That means quickly as we can. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. And thinking about helping somebody is taking me out of my head. What's really interesting about the brain is that you can only think one thing at a time. One thought chases out the other thought. So if I'm thinking about me, and I start to think about somebody else, I stop thinking about me. Then it says, love and tolerance of others is our code. Love and tolerance of others, everybody. Mark Houston, one of the great teachers in Alcoholics Anonymous, used to talk about the 10 step like this: watch, ask, turn, watch, ask, turn. I see something that I'm doing. I see my dishonesty. I see my selfishness. I see my self-centeredness. Please, God, take this self-centeredness away from me. I'm asking. I make amends quickly if I've harmed anyone, and then I turn my thoughts. I turn away from what I'm thinking to think about somebody else. Who can I help now? Sometimes it won't be immediately that I can help somebody, but there may be an opportunity right in front of me. But another time I may have to think about it and sort of think, okay, I'll call that guy. That guy I haven't heard of. They used to come to the meeting. I don't know where he is now. I'll try and phone him. I can see how he's doing. Then it says that we've said now that the promises, if you like, or their experience of working that daily step, it's on the go all the time. I'm watching. In the beginning, it starts to be really kind of like on red alert, but after a while, it becomes a habit. And I remember I can see myself. And once I can see myself, and I've seen myself in the 5th step, and my sponsor has pointed out some of my defects of character that I didn't see, like pride, for instance, then I get uncomfortable when I get into that place. And I can feel it and I can see it. Watch, ask, turn. It's on the go. We get a second go at the end of the day. But the 10th step promises go like this, and we cease fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time sanity will have returned. Second step says, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. We've got to work 9.5 steps before we get sanity. And the sanity they're talking about isn't mental illness. It's just the strange mental blank spot that we have around alcohol the thing that takes us back to drinking again. That's the insanity they're talking about. The insanity of alcohol returns and we drink again. I'll have just one or two, it'll be okay. Uh-huh. We will seldom be interested in liquor. I was obsessed with it when I was drinking. Now I don't think about it at all. If tempted, we recoil as from a hot flame. Oh. We react sanely and normally. It's poison for me. I can't drink. It's poison. Okay, don't drink. This is cool. And we will find that this has happened automatically. We see that our new attitude towards liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. What do you mean it just comes? I've just worked 10 steps. Well, we're not trying to stop drinking. None of the steps talk about stopping drinking. They talk about changing us so that we don't need to drink. It's not about stopping drinking. There's a misunderstanding in Alcoholics Anonymous. A large percentage of Alcoholics Anonymous thinks it's about not drinking. But it's not. It's about changing ourselves so that we don't need to drink. And God changes us by working these 12 steps, by being open to this power greater than ourselves. I get changed. I don't need to drink anymore. However, they're going to give us a warning. This is the miracle of it. We're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality around alcohol, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. I'm a recovered alcoholic now. It does not exist for us. I don't have to be on red alert. I can go anywhere that life takes me, whether it's wet or dry or whatever, or whether there's drinking going on or whatever. It doesn't mean anything to me anymore. Wow, that's an amazing thing. But I've got to do 9.5 steps to go, 10 steps to get to it. And those steps are in the big book. They're nowhere else. This is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. Warning, we need to continue to be in fit spiritual condition. How do we do that? Well, we do our amends and we do step 10 on a daily basis. It's easy to let up on a spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. Laurels are the Greeks, when they used to have athletics and they used to have Olympics and they'd have runners and stuff. The winner would always end up with a crown of laurel leaves. And some of their politicians had them as well. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. Subtle, sly, devious, difficult to detect. Foe, a personal enemy. Alcohol is stalking me. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve that is contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. This is where people think that 10, 11 is a maintenance step. And they've already told us that we've got to grow. And the reason we have to grow is that alcohol is stalking us. It's not like I'm on red alert all the time that, I'm going to get caught out drinking. No, that's not how it is. But my alcoholism is getting worse even though I'm not drinking. If I took a drink today after the amount of time I've been sober, I would be dead in a few weeks. Because that's how I would drink. Because my alcoholism is worse now than it was when I quit. Because of my age. That's how it is. If the body didn't 40 years ago when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, my body didn't do alcohol. I'm 40 years older now. There's no way that my body can do alcohol now. I would be dead in a few weeks. Then it says, every day is a day we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. So another vision exercise. A vision exercise. What's it look like today, God? How do I align my will with your will today? We're going to talk about that on the next page. These are thoughts that must go with us constantly. They said, I must say, how can I best serve you? Thy will, not mine, be done. Which is the reason why I use that at the end of the Serenity Prayer. I know there's an awful lot of people that use the Serenity Prayer on a daily basis when they could be doing step 10. And they use the Serenity Prayer. But if you're using the Serenity Prayer, always finish with, thy will, not mine, be done. because I got to hear that myself. I got to do that out loud. I say, your will, not mine, not mine. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We may exercise our willpower along this line all the wish. It is the proper use of the will, aligning my will to God's will. Can we have a mute in there somewhere? Thank you very much. That's wonderful. Okay. How can I best serve you? Aligning my will with God's will. Again, Mark Houston used to say, 10-step is about realigning our will with God's will. I go off and start running the show, and I start to get selfish, self-centered, dishonest, afraid. It's not going my way. Please, God, take the selfishness away from me. Show me what you would. Show me where I'm supposed to go. What's your will for me right now? And it says, these thoughts must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish, the line of the will. I align my will with God's will for me today. Not tomorrow, not yesterday, but today, right now. In a few moments, I might start to run the show again, and I have to do a quick 10-step. I go, okay, God, I'm doing it again. It's not working. You do it. It's all yours. Much is already said, being said about receiving strength, inspiration, direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed directions to this point in the big book, we have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. That's important, that we're starting to feel the presence of this power. We don't just believe in the power, we're feeling the presence of the power. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further, and that means more action. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Many of you, better men than we are using it constantly. It works. If we have the proper attitude and work at it. So it's going to take practice, practice, practice. And what is the right attitude? The right attitude is, show me your will for me today. I'm not asking for anything other than to be shown God's will. I'm not asking for a new car, for a bigger apartment, for a new relationship or loads of money, none of that. I'm asking to be shown what God's will is for me today. It would be easy to be vague about this matter, yet we believe that we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. There's a bunch of questions here. This is the 10th step. This is the 11th step nightly review. That whole paragraph is a series of questions. I answer the questions. Where there's a question mark, answer the question. Where have I been selfish, dishonest, resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Have I been there today? So far, no. Do I owe an apology? So far, no. Have we kept something to ourselves we should have discussed with another person at once? No. Were we kind and loving towards all? Actually, no. I wasn't very kind and loving towards an angler this morning when I went for a run around a lake at 7 o'clock this morning, because it was very cool, and right now it's 36 degrees and it's very, very hot here, which is the reason why I lose my thread every now and again. But he had all his kit across the track that I was running on, and he had plenty of other space, and I just kind of gave him the slow hand clap as I went by. So I wasn't being very kind to him. So I probably owe an apology to that gentleman anyway, but he will probably be gone. So anyway, I wasn't kind and loving towards all. What could we have done better? Well, I could have actually just ignored him and gone around and run through the grass and let him be. We'll be thinking of ourselves most of the time. Well, I was thinking about myself at that point, because off the path, it's very uneven. And I'm an old bloke and I don't want to fall over when I'm running. Or were we thinking about what we could do for others, or what we could pack into the stream of life? Well, some of the time. But we are careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection that would diminish our usefulness to others. So I'm not going to beat myself up about the fact that I got upset with this Dangler guy. After making our review, I made a mistake today. Okay, God, I made a mistake today. Show me tomorrow how not to make that same mistake tomorrow, judging other people again. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. On awakening, the next morning, we let us think about the 24 hours ahead. So we have a time sitting thinking about what's going to happen today. We consider our plans for the day. But before we begin to consider our plans for the day, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. That has become a habit for me when I wake up in the morning. I wake up, I look up at the ceiling, I say, please God, direct my thinking, especially be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, self-seeking motives. Then I get up. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God has given us brains to use. Our thought life would be placed on a much higher plane when the thinking is cleared of wrong motives. What's wrong motives? Selfish and self-centered motives. Motives about helping other folks and being kind and patient and generous and self-sacrificing to other people. Patient, tolerant, kindness and loving towards all. I was until I got to that angler, and then it was only about 5 minutes. I was back on it again, but it's okay. See, we all make mistakes. I make mistakes every day. I'm not special. I'm just an alky. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. Okay, I don't know what to do today. Oh, I don't know what God's will is for me today. Okay, we may not be able to determine what course to take. Here we ask God for inspiration. So we don't worry about it. We just say, okay, God, I'm going to sit quiet and see if I get an inspiration. An intuitive thought. We ask God for inspiration or an intuitive thought or a decision. I don't know what to do. I got this to do and I got that to do and I got that to do and I don't know. So I sit quiet and say, okay, God, I need an intuitive thought or decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. See, praying is talking to God. Meditation is listening in silence. That's where God is. God doesn't talk to me, but I sometimes get a feeling that goes, actually, you should be doing this today, Pete. Okay, cool. That'll do. We're often surprised how the right answers come after we tried this for a while. What used to be a hunch, occasional inspiration, gradually becomes to work and part of the mind. Practice, practice, practice. It works. It really does. It actually works. Being still in experience and having just made conscious contact with God, conscious contact. Hey, God, here I am this morning. How you doing? It is not probable that we are going to be inspired at all times. We might pay for this presumption, all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. God told me to do this. I heard that. I've heard that sometimes in Alcoholics Anonymous. Somebody said, oh, God just told me to do this. And I go, oh, really? Okay. I wonder if the ego's got in the way between God and what you're doing. Nevertheless, we find our thinking will, as time passes, over time, practice, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely upon it. We usually conclude the period of meditation, which is this conversation with God. That's what they're talking about. They're not talking about yogic meditation. They're talking about a conversation with God. There was a wonderful book, actually, that it got goofy after the second or third volume, but there was a book called Conversations with God. And it's actually very interesting because it was pretty much doing what the Oxford group used to do, which was to sit down in their quiet time with a paper and a pencil and write down any thought that came to them. And then they'd examine it afterwards to see whether it was coming from God or whether it was coming from themselves. But that's not AA, it's something else. So it says we conclude the period of meditation with a prayer. And the prayer that we be shown throughout the day what our next step is to be. That we that we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no requests for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. And I took that one time. I used to have a really old, really beaten up old little car, a little, what was it? It was a Vauxhall Nova. And a really beaten up little car. And I used to pray in the morning, please God, give me a big car so that I can go and carry some people to meetings. See, it wasn't just for me to have the big car. I wanted to carry people to meetings. See, I thought that was going to work. Actually, it didn't. I got an even smaller, more beaten up car afterwards. Anyway, we are careful never. God, my higher power is as a comedian. I got to tell you, my higher power is a trickster. We are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time in doing that. It doesn't work. You can easily see why. Because it's selfish and self-centered. Now, you can change the half of that paragraph into a prayer by just putting in front of it. It says, please God, show me throughout this day what my next step is to be. Please grace me whatever I need to take care of the problems of life today. I ask especially for freedom from self-will. Your will, not mine, be done. Amen. Or whatever. Let it be so, let it be now, let it be. I like that. If circumstances warrant, we ask our wives or friends to join us in morning meditation. If we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also, not instead of. You see, we are alcoholics and our ego is our problem. And the ego will regrow when I can think that sometimes I think I'm very spiritual, you know. I am so spiritual that I don't have to do morning quiet time, that God will just look after me. And about 10 minutes later, I end up on my knees thinking to myself, no, you're in the wrong place, Pete. You need to go do what you were supposed to do because otherwise today is going to go wrong. But we do that. Nightly review, I'm too tired. So do it in the morning. I actually do it in the morning, nightly review in the morning, because I'm awake and I'm seeing the mistakes I made yesterday in front of the day. Anyway, that's just my choice. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select, memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles we are discussing. There are wonderful prayers out there. One of the greatest ones that I've discovered is a thing called welcoming prayer. Look it up on Google, welcoming prayer. It's wonderful. There's another one, a prayer of abandonment by Charles de Foucault. Wonderful stuff. I even listen to some well, I can actually, I do some chanting sometimes too. I'm a browser in religions. Okay, I'm a browser. Somebody I know said to me, you're a Unitarian. I said, I don't know what the heck I am, but I'm apparently a Unitarian. Everybody's the same. All the gods, there's all these gods, and we call them different names, but they all mean the same thing. I think that's a Unitarian. I don't know. There are many helpful books also, wonderful books. I've got a wonderful book right now. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Wonderful book. 30 Daily Reflections by a wonderful gentleman called Thomas Merton. I use that. I use some Hindu stuff. I use some Buddhist stuff. At one time I used to, because Mark Houston mentioned it, was a Tao thing, which is a what was it? It was the 352 Tao. It's one a day. But I didn't kind of click with me, that one. And so I believe step 11 gives us permission to go out and seek a framework for this power that we're in touch with. Seek a framework for it. If we go back to the tradition that we were born into, or whatever we grew up in, or we went through certain ceremonies of belonging to a particular religion, then that's fine. Or find something you feel comfortable with, but find something that aligns itself with this book, because it's really interesting the way this book talks about it. It's really interesting. So it says we emphasize the principles we've been discussing. St. Francis prayer again as well. I know I'm talking all about Christian prayers, but they just seem to pop up. There are many helpful books, also suggestions we've obtained from one's priest, minister, rabbi. Be quick to see where religious people are right. Or guru, there's one. Make use of what they offer. Here's the 10th step. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful. We ask for the right thought or action. We are constantly reminding ourselves we are no longer running the show. Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done, thy will be done, thy will not mine be done. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. I need to align my will with God's will. It works, it really does. We alcoholics are undisciplined. So we let God discipline us in the simple way we've just outlined. And the simple way they've just outlined is step 10 and 11. The daily disciplines of step 10 and 11. They are very important. One of the things about 10 and 11, if you become practiced in 10 and 11, there is absolutely no doubt you are going to carry the message to another alcoholic. You can't keep it to yourself. You've got to pass it on. You get excited about this. I get really fired up about it. I get so excited about the fact that I've been given the power to help others. It's just an amazing thing. It says, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we just outlined, but that's not all. There is action and more action. Faith without works is dead. The next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. Now, step 12 is not an add-on. Step 12 is part of the daily discipline of 10 and 11. We're asking in our morning meditation, how can I be helpful to the man who's still sick to that? It tells us so right at the end on page 164. I'm going to jump ahead to that. At page 164, it says, halfway down the page, almost right in the middle of the page, it says, ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who's still sick. That's your final prayer before we get up and go into work or go do life. What can I do? How can I help the sick man today? Then, so chapter 7, working with others, practical experience, the experience of the people who wrote this book. Shows that nothing, not prayer and meditation, not doing inventory, not going to meetings, not whatever, will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. What message? Well, the first thing we can do, we go back to Bill's story. And we go back to Bill's story on page 615. A few weeks before, Bill has been lifted up a mountain by God. Okay? And he's never drinking again. And It's only a few weeks before, and he said, my wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping alcoholics to a solution to their problems. I was fortunate my own business association remained skeptical for a year or a half, during which time I found little work. Well, 6 months of that year, he was in Akron. I was not too well at the time. I was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment. He's been taken up a mountain by God, and now he's resentful. I mean, I love that. That's alcoholic. He's got an incredibly short memory. He's forgotten that he's had a spiritual awakening. He's now, they're not treating me right. Nobody's getting sober. I haven't got any money. I can't get a job. This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink. What's the point? What's the use? But soon found that when all other measures failed, prayer, meditation, all the other stuff, work with another alcoholic would save the day. Many times I've gone to my old hospital in despair. He can't get out of bed. He crawls across to the hospital. I'm talking to a man there, I would be amazingly lifted up and sat on my feet. It's a design for living that works in rough going. Now, he doesn't say that the guy gets sober. He says that he gets the benefit of doing what he's doing, whether the guy gets sober or not, because he's making the effort to carry the message to the alcoholic. Now, what's the message? Well, we've got to be very clear on the message. We go to page 60. Top of page 60, we have the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. It says, having had, right at the very top, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics. So the message we're carrying to alcoholics is that the first 11 steps produce a spiritual awakening sufficient to overcome alcoholism. If you follow the directions in this book, probably with a sponsor, because it works better with someone who's experienced them themselves. But you can do it with the book alone. That's what it was designed for. But you've got to read all the black part in the book. You can't read the white stuff behind. You've got to read all the black part. You've got to follow directions from the black part. So that's the message of Alcoholics Anonymous, and the practice these principles in all our affairs. So step 10 and 11 is steps 4 through 9 on a daily basis. So carry this message to other alcoholics. Nobody else, because I'm an alcoholic. I don't carry the message to other folks. I will take them in a direction where I know people in other fellowships. I know people in Cocaine Anonymous, Drug Addicts Anonymous, Heroin Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, Al-Anon, you name it, Gamblers Anonymous, Debtors Anonymous. I've got contacts all over the place, and I can direct you into the fellowship that you crave. But I'm an alcoholic, and I don't know about those other things. I used to use outside dry goods, but I wasn't addicted to them. I used certain chemicals that allowed me to drink more. Speed was pretty good. Purple Hearts it was in the 1960s when I first started. And then it became other stuff. And there's some Peruvian marching powder that was pretty interesting. It kept me sober for a while. I could drink more on that. You did a couple of lines of that and you were sober again. Yeah, I discovered that in California. Wow, get down and get some Coors Light down. Yeah, never mind. I could drink gallons of that stuff. I tell you, the American beer, I could drink gallons of it. It's really thin compared with what we got in the UK and what we got in France. Thin. I drank some truck drivers under the table in Bakersfield one time. I was hitching back to Los Angeles, and this guy picked me up. He was a Buick 88, and he was on his birthday, and he had this bottle of Jack Daniels, and he took me into this really dark bar, and I had hair down my back someplace and droopy mustache, and there were all these sort of truck drivers, rednecks, And they were all drinking, and they were stacking the cans up on the table, and I was drinking away like crazy. And they said, "We never seen a hippie do that." I said, you don't know where I come from. Anyway, you can help when no one else can. Why? Because we've been there. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Why? Because we've been there. When my first sponsor, Billy, came to see me, he talked about his drinking. By listening to his drinking, I caught alcoholism because I drank the same way as him. And I thought, you know what you're talking about, Billy. And then he started telling me about the steps. And because I trusted him with his experience of being an alcoholic, I trusted him to show me how to work the 12 steps. That's why I can't 12-step a drug addict, because my drug use was crazy. It was disco stuff. I have no idea what goes through the head of someone that's a drug addict. I've got no idea. No idea what goes through the head of a gambler, because I never gamble. But by golly, did I drink. And I can tell you what goes through my head when I'm drinking. Remember, they are very ill. They're reminding us, you see, we've got this incredibly short memory. Here I am, a sober alcoholic now. Ah, yeah, life is wonderful. I've got contact with God, the whole deal. And I forget that this guy that just crawled in is really, really sick. And I got to remember that when I'm talking to a newcomer. Life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others. 12 steps, somebody. Take him through the 12 steps, sitting in a meeting one time, and he walks in with a newcomer, and they go sit in the corner with a big book, and you say, listen to what it says here. I'm going, whoa. And I get shivers when I see someone that I've sponsored carrying the message to another person. It's just incredible. To watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow about you. And I've seen that several times. The fellowship grow around this big book. To have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. I've got friends all over the world. They're called alcoholics, and they're in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've never met most of them, but I know they're friends because we're all the same. We know that you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. Perhaps you're not acquainted with any drinkers who want to recover. You can easily find some by asking a few doctors, ministers, priests, or hospitals. They will only be too glad to assist you. Don't start out as an evangelist or reformer. Don't start talking about God. I got God. You need to get God. No. Unfortunately, a lot of prejudice exists. You will be handicapped if you arouse it, particularly around doctors and psychiatrists. Ministers and doctors are competent, and you can learn much from them if you wish, if you keep your ears open and your mind open also. But it happens that because of your own drinking experience, you can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics. Let's go to page 18. Page 18 of the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a paragraph which is in italics. There's two paragraphs at the bottom of the page. The first one's in italics. It says, it's important. The first, it says that the ex-problem drinker who has found this solution, the solution in this book, 12 steps, and how to work them, who is properly armed with the facts about himself. I'm an alcoholic. I have the ego the size of a small planet. I am selfish, self-centered, dishonest, and afraid most of the time before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. Can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. That's what Billy did to me. The infection of alcoholism came in through my ear by listening to his drinking. I had no idea I was an alcoholic. I just thought I was a drunk. And by listening to his story and how he drank, I'm going, oh, I drank like that, Billy. I drank like that. Oh, yeah, I did that, Billy. He said, well, he said, I'm an alcoholic. And I said, well, if you call yourself an alcoholic, I must be one too. And he said, well, if you are, you're sick. But he said, we got a solution here. It's okay. Don't worry. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. You see, they're saying that it takes one alcoholic talking to another to actually get this relationship going, where I trust this man to take me through the steps, because I'm a skeptic and I'll argue about anything. But this guy seems to know what he's talking about around drinking, and he's different from me because he's sober and I'm not. And he looks shiny and clean and everything else. I'm going to do what he does. And he's going to show me what he does. But the man who's making the approach has had the same difficulty. And this is singleness of purpose in Alcoholics Anonymous. We deal with alcoholics. But he obviously knows what he's talking about. His whole deportment shouts the prospect is the man with the real answer. So when I go on a 12-step call, I look like a recovered alcoholic. I don't show up in working clothes. I show up looking smart and clean and smiley. Always go on a 12-step call with a smile. They hate it. I hated it. There's a smiley guy at my front door. Who are you? And he was Glaswegian. And he said, my name's Billy. I hear you want to stop drinking. So cooperate, never criticize. We're going to go up to page 90. To be helpful is our only aim. When you discover a prospect for Alcoholics Anonymous, find out all you can about it. Now, one of the other things that we got to remember about the 12th step is it says that we carried this message to the alcoholic. Now, what most of us do now is we wait in the meetings for people to show up. But the 12th step says that we carry the message to the alcoholic. So that means that we go outside the meeting to places where we can find alcoholics, which is why we talk to doctors, ministers, rabbis, whatever, to find lawyers, policemen, to find alcoholics. My home group is a primary purpose group. Our primary purpose is to carry the message to alcoholics who still suffer outside of the meeting. We go as a group, 3 or 4 of us. We go to treatment centers and whatever. Anybody will let us in. If he does not want to stop drinking, don't waste your time trying to persuade him. Number one question when you ask somebody whether they want to quit drinking or not. Do you actually want to quit drinking, or do you just want to be sober for a little while to get your life straightened out and then think that you can go back again? Because if that's the case, then I can't help you. But if you want to stop drinking for good and all, I have a solution here. It worked for me. I can show you how to do it. You may spoil a later opportunity. So we don't say, okay, well, maybe it'll work for you. Maybe you can control your drinking. My hat will be off to you if you can. This advice is given to his family also. They should be patient, realizing they're dealing with a sick person. And it's the mental illness we're talking about here, not the physical bit. It's the brain of the alcoholic that will take him back to drinking. If there is any indication he wants to stop, have a good talk with the person most interested in him, usually his partner. Get an idea of his behavior, his problems, his background, the seriousness of his condition, his religious leanings. You need this information to put yourself in his place, to see how you would like to be him to approach you if the tables were turned. So having information about the person is great, but actually they're going to counter that on the next page. Sometimes it's wise to wait until he goes on a binge. The best time to do a 12-step call, about 6 or 12 hours after he's had his last drink. When he's sitting there shaking and puking, and if he's been really, really drinking, he'll be going into DTs. Wonderful, wonderful time. Wonderful time to go talk to a guy, because he's going to be feeling really, really busted and depressed. The family may object to this, but unless he is in a dangerous physical condition, it's better to risk it. Do not deal with him when he is very drunk. No, because he won't hear you. And he won't remember anyway. Unless he is ugly and the family needs your help, tell him to call the cops. Lock him up for the night and go see him next day. Wait for the end of a spree, or at least a lucid interval. I wasn't a spree drinker. I was drinking all the time. But I did have lucid intervals when I didn't have so much alcohol in me. Then let his family or friend ask him if he wants to quit for good. See, we never quit. This isn't temporary. This is quitting forever. Because I will always have the allergic reaction to alcohol. I will always overdrink when I drink. Always. I always did. I always will. And if you would go to any extreme to do so. So there's two conditions here. Stopping for good forever, and are you willing to go to any length? And the any length is the 12 steps. But also I have a few rules. I've got a few rules about how I sponsor people. I am not your buddy. I am a teacher teaching you the 12 steps. That's what I am. I'm friendly, but I'm not your buddy. I'm here to wake you up at times. I will shock you sometimes to wake you up because you are suffering from a mental illness called alcoholism. And we need to be woken up. My sponsor used to wake me up regularly. My current sponsor still does. Because we sleepwalk back into drinking, you know. We do. We just sleepwalk back into drinking. It's almost like we just got the snow. Anyway. So, 2 questions. Quit for good, any extreme to do so. I make schedules with my guys. When I go meet them, I don't take casual calls. We have schedules so that we meet on a particular day. We go through these 12 steps. We go through the 12 steps with the big book. That's the only thing I want them reading while we're doing the 12 steps. It doesn't take very long. It only takes a couple of 3 weeks, but we concentrate on the big book. That's it. I want them to go to 1 meeting a week that I attend. They can go to any other meetings they want, but every week they come to my home group because I want to see them at a meeting in my home group. That's part of the deal. We do schedules, and if you're 10 minutes late for the schedule, I'm probably going to be doing something else because we do stuff on time when we're sober. We're never late. We're always on time when we're sober. When you go to the meeting, you've got to be there half an hour before it starts, and you've got to stay on half an hour afterwards to do the dishes and tidy up the room. Then we can go for a coffee and we have a talk. I want a date on when you're going to do a 5th step. That kind of stuff. So, if he says yes, your attention should be his attention should be drawn to you as a person who has recovered. I'm watching the time here. You should be described to him as one of a fellowship who, as part of their own recovery, a vital part of our own recovery, try to help others and will be glad to talk to him if he cares to see you. If he does not want to see you, never force yourself upon him. And if a family member phones me up and said, oh, my wife or my husband or my brother or whatever is drinking too much, I say, okay, I'd like to talk to him, please. I want to ask him some questions because I'm not going to go and visit this guy out of the blue without talking to him first. Because I've done that and I've been chased out of the house with an axe. that was good fun. I was with we used to go in twos. We went with another guy and we ran for it. We went out of here. So never force yourself upon him. Neither should the family hysterically plead with him to do anything, nor should they tell you much about you. Just that I am a recovered alcoholic and I'd be happy to talk to somebody if they want to talk to me. They should wait to the end of a drinking next drinking bout. You may place this book where you can see it in the interval. That's a joke. I love it. I love it. Now the book is blue, right? It's blue. You take the cover off, it's still blue. Okay. The book they're talking about looks like this. Okay. Put it where you can see it. Oh yeah, you can't bloody miss it. Even if it's that way around. It's so bright. Unbelievable. Put it where you can see it. I can see. And what he does, he looks at it, he goes, what? What's this? And he'll open up the first page, the title page, and he'll read the title page. And it says the story of how many, of more than 100 men have recovered from alcoholism in the first edition. And he picks it up and he slings it across. Who you calling an alcoholic? And sometimes later he might pick it up and start reading it. Here, no specific rule can be given. The family must decide these things, but urge them not to be over anxious, for that might spoil matters. Usually the family should not try and tell your story. Well, they don't know my story, so I don't tell it to them. Where possible, avoid meeting the man through his family. Okay, so they've just told a whole page about meeting the man through his family, and now they're telling us don't do it. Brilliant. But it's important. It's so much better to meet them alone than it is with family, because the family, I mean, all my family had disappeared. I was by myself. So that was fine. Billy could come see me. That was great. It says approach through a doctor or an institution like a treatment center or whatever is a better bet. If your man needs hospitalization, he should have it, but not forcibly unless he is violent. Some of us need to be detoxed. That's what they're talking about. They're not talking about a treatment, a 3-month treatment in treatment center. They're talking about a 5-day detox. Let the doctor, if he will, tell him he has something in the way of a solution. They're talking about Dr. Silkworth and doctor's opinion. He used to look at the ones that he couldn't help and pass them on to AA. When your man is better, i.e. detoxed, because while we've got alcohol in our bodies, we want more alcohol. It's a physical craving. When the alcohol is gone, 48 to 72 hours, it's gone. Now, my mind is taking me back to a drink, but not the alcohol. And that's what they're talking about. So, when a man is better, the doctor might suggest a visit from you. Though you have talked with his family, leave them out of the first discussion. Now, if I have access to the family, I will tell them what I do, where I'm from, and what am I going to attempt to do with this guy because he says he wants to stop. Under these conditions, your prospect will see is under no pressure. That's why the family mustn't be there. Oh, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. There was a craze a few years ago for what was called family interventions. And family interventions used to go and used to corral the alcoholic in a room and they used to tell him how sick he was. I reckon that would cause more relapses than anything else, because I'd start drinking at them rather than, I mean, I'd be really, really resentful. And I'd go drink at them. Who they calling an alcoholic? I'll show you as an alcoholic. And I used to go out and do it. It's crazy. It's just not this. He will feel he can deal with you about being nagged by his family, which is an intervention. They're nagging at him. Call on him while he is still jittery. He will be more receptive when depressed. My grand sponsor, Cliff Bishop, used to say, you haven't been on a real 12-step call until you've had puke on your shoes. I love that. He was nasty. He really was. He used to when a drunk used to walk into the room or into his place, a new guy would show up at his house. He used to give him a big hug and take a big sniff because he used to love the smell of drunks. He was weird. See your man alone if possible. If not possible, continue, but talk quietly. I've had a wonderful experience. There was a guy, an English-speaking guy, that ended up having an alcoholic fit outside of our meeting. I went to the hospital to see him the next day, and it was a French hospital, and I went to visit him, and he was in a room with 3 other patients. It was like a sort of small ward. And I actually said to everybody in French, can anybody here speak English? And they all went, oh, no. I said, fine, thank you. And then I went to this guy, I said, they can't understand what we're saying, so this is cool. Because I said it in French, they answered in French, that was cool. They weren't pretending. At first, engage in general conversation. That's what my friend Billy did. After a while, turned the talk to some phase of drinking. He told me all about his drinking. And I'm going, yeah, I drink like that. Tell him enough about your drinking habits, symptoms, and experiences to encourage him to speak of himself. Yeah, I did that, Billy. If he wishes to talk, let him do so. You will thus be getting a better idea how you ought to proceed. Now, they're giving us directions on a 12-step call. We go in there and start telling him about our drinking, and he starts talking about his drinking. I listen. When I'm talking about my drinking, I don't give him an hour-long drunk-along. War stories, none of that. I just tell him, go through various, just 20 minutes max. He's got a very short attention span. But I want him to talk about his drinking so I get an idea whether he's an alcoholic or not. If he's not communicative, give him a sketch of your drinking career up to the time you quit. I paint. I paint pictures. I draw a lot. And when I do a sketch, it's only a few lines, and it's an aid memoir that to something I'm going to paint. It's just a sketch. There's no detail. If I'm going to do a detailed drawing, I'll do a detailed drawing. But if I do a sketch, it's only a few lines. So it's a few lines. And one of the templates for that is I always say to the guys I sponsor, if you want a template for a 12-step call, read Bill's story, the first 8 pages. Time, how long it takes you to read those 8 pages out loud. And that's the time that you should spend on your drinking story. Because all Bill's telling you in his drinking story is how it got worse, how it got worse, how it got worse, how it got worse, how it got worse. And it takes about 20 minutes. Because he's got an incredibly short attention span. If I start to talk to him a lot of details and stuff, I'm going to lose him. But say nothing for the moment of how that was accomplished. So we don't talk about the solution. We just talk about drinking. If he's a serious mood, dwell on the troubles liquor caused you. About how we ended up in jail and ended up in hospital and got arrested and lost our jobs. And being careful not to moralize or lecture. If his mood is light, tell him humorous stories about your escapades. Well, I didn't have many of those. It's more like graveyard humor, actually. It was bad stuff. Get him to tell some of his. When he sees you know all about the drinking game, commence to describe yourself as an alcoholic. That's important. Describe myself as don't tell him he's one. I'm not telling him he's one. But if he's been nodding, I've been saying, oh, this I drink like this, I drink like this, I drink like this. And he, I drink like that too. Oh, I did that. I've drunk aftershave. Oh, I've been now. The latest one is that gel sanitizer. You know, Bossy, you can drink that. You can mix it with orange juice, hand sanitizer. It's something like 80% alcohol. It's got to be more than 70% to kill the bugs. So it's more than 70% alcohol. Put that with some orange juice or pineapple juice. It'll melt down. You drink it. If you've got nothing else. I've drunk aftershave. I have nothing else. I'll find a drink anywhere if I'm drinking. all that stuff. I mean, those are escapades, you know. Commence to describe yourself as an alcoholic. Tell him how baffled you were. Why can't I drink like other people? I'm just going to finish on this paragraph. How finally you learned that you were sick. I have an illness called alcoholism. Give him an account of your struggles you made to stop. Show him the mental twist that leads to the first drink of a spree. We suggest you do this as we have done in the chapter on alcoholism. I drank when I was unhappy. I drank when I was happy. I drank when I was in a relationship. I drank when I lost my job. I drank when the girlfriend left. I drank when I was working. I drank. I'm an alcoholic. It's not outside, it's inside. It's sunny day, rainy day, snowy day, cold day, people loving me, people hating me. It didn't matter. I was drinking. If he's an alcoholic, he will understand you at once. He will match your mental inconsistencies with some of his own. See, the mental inconsistency. I'm happy, I drink. I'm unhappy, I drink. I'm elated, I drink. I'm depressed, I drink. It doesn't matter. I'm an alcoholic. My natural state is drinking. He will match your inconsistencies with some of his own. I'll finish that off next week. So I'm going to make a mark. Thank you, everyone, for being patient.